Hi, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Laura Albini, and I'm head of marketing for FPT Americas and Intellinet. For over 20 years, FPT Software has been a leading IT services provider, and in 2018, FPT acquired Intellinet, a consulting firm of business-minded technologists. With our combined strengths, we are able to provide end-to-end digital transformation services. Today, I'm excited to have with us Tim Alexander, Director of Data, and Aaron Bailey, Experience Architect. Their different perspectives will come together today in an engaging discussion on combining data and user experience to deliver meaningful insights. Tim, Aaron, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So I've been in the data industry now about 22 years, and over those years, I've learned quite a bit. But one of the things that I learned that I think was most valuable is to include the user experience in the data process. It wasn't always natural, and now to me, it's one of the first things I think of. Early in my career, I was with a startup, and the CEO and myself got into a little bit of an argument about where our priorities should be. I was delivering the data. I was concerned about the quality of the data and the fact that it was repeatable and timely. And he was worried about the experience and the UI. And his argument was, this is what sells product. My experience was bad data is what's going to kill product. Eventually we worked things out, but it was really, we were both wrong and we were both right. It should have been both of us coming together, having a journey together right from the beginning. Gone are the days where you produce all of your data, push it out and say, now let me show you how to use this data. Let me show you how we design this data. Instead, it should be starting with the user experience along the entire journey and traveling together with that. And one of the people that have helped me most in my career figure that out and learn that and journey with me is Aaron Bailey, who's here with me. So thank you for joining to give some of your thoughts on that.
Thank you. As we all know, personalization through data is really what differentiates companies now. It allows them to build unique experiences and really get that increased engagement and drive the better outcomes. So it's really important that we understand how people consume the data. You really can't leverage data effectively if create personalized relationships if you don't understand what you're consuming. And so really an effective user experience meets needs on an individual level, and those individual levels are all the way through the company down to the end user of the product. So we really need to consider all of the touch points along the way and really what's driving those experiences.
Okay. Well, I know one of the pieces that we often work on together from the beginning is identifying those personas and use cases, understanding who's going to be consuming it. We'll talk later about the accuracy and perceived accuracy, but it really starts with just ring fencing in who is going to be consuming it and how they want to consume it.
Absolutely. The personas of the advocate. I mean, it's hard to understand the user's perspective without really getting in and empathizing with that user, and really provides us the structure to drive a narrative for how and when people are consuming data in a way that the whole team can really unify behind that narrative, and you can communicate that narrative across the development process.
Yeah, and we'll talk further on how some of that will help really benefit the delivery and the adoption of pieces. One of the areas that it's helped me with personas is understanding really what the accuracy means. About, 10, 12 years ago, I was working on a big project that had a on-time performance aspect to a big KPI. And when we started looking into the KPIs, we knew that they had published 93, 94% on-time performance. But the whole point of what we were doing is being able to drill further into this and understand where your areas of need are. 93, 94% is a pretty good number. Going from 94 to 95 can be difficult. But when we produced our data, we were getting 73, 74% difference. Well, it was. And I was like, well, the bad is we're way off. The good is, hey, we may have somewhere to actually help, provide change. But the COO, who was the sponsor of, he wasn't happy. He's like, this can't be this far off. Go find out what y'all did wrong, meaning my team. So, all right, I went and started digging, and I did find out what went wrong. I still don't think it was us that went wrong. What it was I went and found the person responsible for delivering that data. Also responds or was being graded on that data. So in on-time performance, he started looking at the data and showing me all the data he threw out. Because things like, well, this is maintenance. It doesn't, I'm not in charge of maintenance. This is HR. I can't control this. These are the reasons that we missed our numbers. And I'm like, it was comical. I was like, well, if you're gonna throw out all the bad data, that's actually, it's accurate, but looks bad on you, you're really not giving an accurate depiction of the data itself. And it's one of the first eye-opening moments of, even though technically it might have been correct, the calculations, the data pipeline was correct, it was still wrong data or bad data because it was showing the wrong picture. People were looking at the wrong areas and couldn't use it the way they needed to. Had I started maybe with some of those people, I would have discovered that up front.
Yeah, and I think that's part of where, use cases and developing this really task-driven scenarios to unify the team behind the specific objectives along those data points is really going to be critical to understanding what the end goal is and clearly creating a narrative for how they get to that end goal and structuring those use cases around that specific task helps us to identify some of those traps along the way where we have a perception issue between how people expect to achieve a certain result. You need to really lay that out in that clearly defined use case that the whole team can articulate with the client and validate and make sure that we're all speaking to the same music.
Yeah, you said a key word there for me that I often repeat is, delivered data has the perception of accurate data. And until proven wrong, they're going to assume that. And once proven wrong, they're probably going to always have that stigma with it. And a lot of times it's, even if it's accurate data, but it's perceived wrong because of the way it's consumed, it's still wrong data. And it's key to make sure you understand what that perception of the data is going to be, or you might be delivering bad data. You may never get out from behind that stigma.
Yeah, a big part of the UX process is really understanding the mental model that people expect to consume that data. Data visualizations can be tremendously powerful in seeing, spotting trends and gaining insights from things, but there's a lot of ways to mess up and miscommunicate data visualization in the same way that you can mess up the underlying data behind it. And likewise, if the data behind it is bad, there's no way to correctly visualize it. But if you incorrectly visualize good data, you can just as powerfully impact the interpretation of that data and create distortions. And so it's really important that we understand not only how people are consuming that data, but really how to design the data so that it has maximum ability to be consumed. So there's a lot of design attributes that go into that process as well, but it's really about understanding the context and the semantics and that workflow so that we can prioritize the right items and combine the right sets of data to really glean those insights.
Yeah, so you mentioned the visual aspect of it, which I think earlier in my career I thought UI, UX, same thing, user interface, user experience, and I really learned that's not the case at all. But sometimes one can be used to aid the other. In building credibility, a big piece of my toolbox is using some of that visual design to create a better experience almost right out of the box. Years ago, I started with a long-term client, CFO, that brought my team in to basically say his first complaint was, I am so sick and tired of waking up and coming to the office at 9 a.m. I don't know where my data is. And I got to start calling people, understand where it is, why something's missing, why it's wrong. And my team spends all day trying to find it. Then the development team spends all day trying to explain it or point to things. And it just was such a problem. So one of the things that, almost any well thought out pipeline, even not so well thought out pipelines, usually has metadata about where it's at, how far through the process am I, what have I pulled, what haven't I pulled? And in this project, and something I continuously now repeat, is let's use some of that data and some of that user or that visual design to just show people where you're at in it. So it's like, all right, I'm on step 13 of 15, 14 and 15 usually take 20 minutes a piece. Right there, I just eliminated a need for a phone call, a need for angst. It still may be late, still may not like it, but at least it doesn't leave somebody wondering and wasting their time. They can quickly see that. Same thing with the scenario of hey, I'm doing a predictive production run. So next week I need to run a production line. What should I do based on sales? Well, if I have 27 salespeople, 25 have reported, but I just put a number out as we need this much of each widget. Well, people are using on bad information and they start to get aggravated when they realize that after a production run happened. Doesn't mean that that data is not useful. It's just not being correctly qualified. So having just quick things of here, we've got 25 of 27 that have reported, and here's the 2 that haven't. If you get fancy, you can even go back and say, here's their average over the last 6 months, 6 years, whatever that they typically do. It creates such a better experience for the end user with data that's really extremely small and should be extremely easy to get to in a development pipeline.
Well, and that's a big part of, consumption of data is really the simplicity. And the best things that work are the things that speak directly to the task or the person that's consuming it. And part of the success of apps is that ability to focus on singular things. And so it's really important that we understand that narrative and that task-driven outcome. But, it's also important to your point that, that we build that credibility through communication throughout this process, because a big part of the UX is that, traditionally data is driven by, processors, people that get things done. There's a lot of, mechanics and not mechanics, but moving parts involved in the collection and consumption of data. And so typically UX is somewhat of an afterthought to this. And so it's really important that we build the credibility for the UX process as well, because we want to get maximum exposure to those stakeholders. We want the stakeholders to participate in truly guiding us through their workflow and understanding what they do, so that we can empathize with them and we can really target specific things that they're trying to do and develop the data structure and the interface and that whole experience around that process. And so the more we communicate using visuals and showing them the structure of the process and how that structure can then translate into additional projects, additional scope, things like that outside of what we're currently doing. It's applicable to multiple things once you get into that level of understanding of your own processes. It tends to gain us buy-in and credibility from the stakeholders on participating, as well as can lead us into other engagements.
All right. Well, I mean, that sounds great. So Aaron, I appreciate you joining me today. I mean, we're going to wrap things up, but I want to leave you with, a few key takeaways as we leave. And if people want to dig deeper into them, we can be available to discuss them more. We started out with the persona piece, and then moved on to, the involvement in the discovery process and then to accelerate that development cycle. The accuracy is a big piece. It doesn't end with QA. It doesn't end when you deliver a product of validation. It's accurate once somebody can accurately consume the data, and that's a key takeaway from there. But, I appreciate, all that you've helped me with over the years, and hopefully many more future endeavors together.
I look forward to it.
So last thing I'd leave is just opportunities to dig deeper into this. Here we have some options for either a personalized approach to issues that people might have that they want to dig deeper into, or if they heard something today that is a little vague or very interesting to them, we can definitely set up some whiteboarding sessions to go deeper into these with Aaron or myself or someone from the team.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for joining.